I don't know about you, but sometimes, in the rush of everyday life, I feel a deep need to go back to the beginning, to find the ground zero of my story, the exact point where the rules of the game of life were first defined. Think about it. Have you ever wondered where the ideas that shaped what we call quality of life came from? The foundation of respect, family, honesty? These rules were not born in a vacuum. They came from a physical place, from an encounter so monumental that it forever changed the course of humanity. This place is a mountain shrouded in mystery, smoke, fire, and a promise. Its name? Sinai, the beginning of the greatest rescue story. Imagine the scene. You are in the middle of a vast desert, the silence broken only by the wind. You have just left a place of slavery, a lifetime of forced labor. Freedom is new, frightening, and uncertain. You are a people, but not yet a nation. You are free, but you don't yet have a clear purpose. It is against this backdrop that the story of Mount Sinai unfolds. According to the Bible, it is the story of Moses, a reluctant leader, guiding 1 million or more people through an unforgiving desert. They had seen the impossible, the parting of the Red Sea, but now they needed something more solid than a miracle of passage. They needed a compass, they needed a law. The journey stopped in front of an imposing mountain. It was not just any mountain, it was the stage where God would decide to speak directly to the people. Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke, because the Lord had descended upon it in fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. Exodus 19:18. Pause for a moment and feel the power of this description. We are not talking about a calm, religious event in the quiet of a temple. We are talking about an event of raw power, a demonstration of strength that left a psychological and spiritual mark forever. It is a defining moment that reminds us, quality life begins when we find an unshakable foundation. The compass of the good life. What came out of that fire? The 10 Commandments. They are much more than ancient rules. They are the instruction manual for a community that wanted to succeed. Want peace of mind? You shall not covet. Want harmony in your family? Honor your father and mother. Want a just society? You shall not steal, you shall not kill, you shall not lie. Mount Sinai is not just a geographical peak. It is the origin of Western ethics, and by extension, the pillar of everything we seek to have a full life. Peace of mind, knowing that there are clear boundaries. Strong relationships, rules that protect loyalty and trust. Purpose, a connection to something greater than yourself. God's mountain is, in fact, the mountain that forms the foundation of your quality of life. The enigma that opens the debate. But here lies the heart of the mystery, the part that turns this story into a hunt worthy of Indiana Jones with the precision of archaeological study. Where exactly is this mountain? It's incredible, isn't it? The most important mountain in the history of faith, the setting for the giving of the law, has had its exact location debated for centuries. The Bible gives us clues, but the name Sinai, or Horeb, depending on the passage, appears in a context that is, at best, vague for our modern maps. Tradition points to one place. Researchers and adventurers, some with more passion than method, point to other places, bringing to light surprising evidence. Mountains with blackened tops, caves full of artifacts, and even a golden calf carved in stone. Over the next few pages, we will not just read a history book, we will travel through tradition, stepping on the ground of Mount Sinai that everyone knows, Jebel Musa. Cross the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, to Arabia, investigating the controversial and fascinating theses about Jabal al-Lawz. Explore lesser-known but scientifically sound hypotheses. Our commitment is to accuracy, but our mission is to show you that, in the end, the geographical debate serves to reinforce an essential truth. Whatever the mountain, the message of Sinai is eternal and practical. Get ready. We're going to dive into the desert, investigate the latest studies, and discover the mountain of God that is on the map and the meaning it should have in your life today. If you're enjoying this, click like, and be sure to subscribe to stay on top of our debates. The journey begins now. After such a dramatic event, with fire, smoke, and the voice of God, You would expect the location to be marked in bold on the maps of the time, right? It should be easy to simply open Google Maps and type in original Mount Sinai. Unfortunately, the reality is more complex. To understand why the location of Sinai has become a 3,000-year-old puzzle, we need to put on our biblical detective hats. Where does the narrative, which is perfect for guiding us in life, give us geographical clues? And most importantly, what does the Bible tell us for sure about this place? Sinai or Horeb? The first clue is actually a confusion of names. You will notice that the sacred text uses two words for the mountain or region, Sinai and Horeb. It is common in the Bible for a larger region to be named after a famous peak. Think of it this way. Horeb is often used to refer to the region or mountain range where the encounter took place. It is where Moses, before the Exodus, saw the burning bush, Exodus 3:1. Sinai is the name most often used to refer to the specific mountain where the law was given, and is sometimes used interchangeably with Horeb. What does this teach us for life? That the name we give things is not always the most important thing. What is important is the purpose of the place. Whatever the name, the place was the center of the covenant. The four non-negotiable geographical clues. If we want to find the real Sinai, the mountain must meet four geographical requirements clearly and directly described in the books of Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Clue 1. The Sinai Desert and the camp. The Bible tells us that after 3 months of travel, the Israelites arrived at the Sinai Desert, Exodus 19:1-2. This is not simple information. We are talking about a population of millions of people, or at least hundreds of thousands, plus their flocks. This requires a gigantic camping plain at the foot of the mountain. Sinai could not have been an isolated peak surrounded by narrow gorges. Life lesson. God's purpose for the collective, the nation of Israel, requires space. Similarly, our personal growth, our quality of life, does not happen in cramped conditions. We need mental space to camp and prepare ourselves to receive great revelations. Clue 2. Water and support. Before reaching Sinai, the people murmured because of the lack of water in Rephidim, and Moses struck the rock so that water would come out, Exodus 17:6. This means that in the vicinity of the mountain of God, there should be A. a notable rock, B. some kind of water source or reservoir, since the people camped there for about a year, building the tabernacle. Any serious geographical hypothesis must identify an area capable of sustaining, even minimally, a large group of people and their animals in the desert. Clue 3. The route and distance. The Bible details the stops: Mara, Elim, Desert of Sim, Rephidim, Desert of Sinai. The crucial point is the route of the Exodus. The different locations proposed for Sinai depend dramatically on where the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, or Sea of Reeds. If the crossing was at the Gulf of Suez, traditional Sinai, Jebel Musa, fits well. If the crossing was at the Gulf of Aqaba, as some theories of Sinai in Arabia suggest, that would push the mountain eastward into modern Saudi Arabia. The Bible is not a GPS, but the detailed stops serve as waypoints that archaeologists use to try to trace the most logical line. Clue 4. The forbidden boundary, Exodus 19. This is perhaps the strongest clue. God instructed Moses to establish physical boundaries around the base of the mountain. No one, not even an animal, could touch the mountain under penalty of death. Exodus 19:12-13. This instruction to surround the mountain is crucial. It implies visibility. The mountain was tall and prominent, clearly visible from where the people were camped. Access. There was enough space for the people to move away, but still be close enough to hear the sound of the trumpets and the voice of God. The true mountain of God must have a large and accessible foot. A broad base that allows for the setting of boundaries and the camping of a multitude in front of it. At this point, you may be asking yourself, okay, the event was grand, the law is vital. But seriously, why spend so much time debating which mountain God actually chose? Doesn't what came out of Sinai matter more than where it is? That's a fair question, and the answer is deeply connected to our central theme, quality of life. The geographical debate about Mount Sinai is not a pastime for archaeologists on their day off or an irrelevant detail. It touches on three fundamental pillars of our existence and our faith. Pillar 1. The solidity of history, the truth of the foundation. The story of the Exodus, the departure from Egypt, the crossing of the sea, the arrival at Sinai, is the founding act of millions of people around the world. It is the moment when a group of slaves becomes a people with a mission and an identity. If Mount Sinai is found with irrefutable evidence, e.g., evidence of Bronze Age encampments or findings consistent with the biblical narrative, it does something powerful. It confirms the narrative. It solidifies the Exodus as a historical event, not just a legend or myth. It validates the account. If the location and geographical clues, the Great Plain, the rock, the boundary, fit perfectly, the account becomes incredibly stronger. For those seeking a life based on faith, confirmation that the central events actually took place in a specific place and time brings indescribable peace of mind. Its foundation is not sand, it is documented history. Pillar 2. What would make your neighbor more likely not to steal from you or to be honest in business? It is not the commandment, "Thou shalt not steal," alone. It is the conviction that this law came from a supreme authority, manifested in a terrible and glorious way on Mount Sinai. If Sinai were just a metaphor, a fairy tale invented by a leader to control the people, the coercive power of the 10 Commandments would be weak. They would be mere suggestions. But if, as the text describes, the mountain shook and there was fire because the creator of the universe was there, that changes everything. The search for the exact location is not a game, it is an investigation into the moral authority that governs our lives. If the event was real and powerful, the law is a mandate for peace, order, and respect, non-negotiable pillars for quality of life in community. Equality of life. The law is not a burden, it is a protective wall. It protects your marriage, your property, your reputation, and your very life. The debate about the mountain forces us to revisit and value this protective wall. Pillar 3. The personal map, the inner search. Finally, the geographical debate serves as an incredible metaphor for each of our journeys of self-knowledge and faith. Often in life, we find ourselves in a desert. We want to arrive at a place of purpose, but we are lost between tradition, what we have always been told, and innovation, what seems exciting and new. And Jebel Musa, the traditional Sinai, represents tradition, the comfort zone of established faith. It is the security of what has been accepted for millennia. Jabal al-Lawz, the new Sinai, represents challenge, inquiry, the risk of questioning the status quo in order to perhaps find a deeper and more coherent truth. What is more important? To follow the path that everyone else has followed, or to have the courage to investigate whether there is a more accurate path? We have seen the strength and necessity of knowing the truth about Mount Sinai. The search for its location is, in essence, the search for historical confirmation that supports the authority of the law. Now it is time to stop looking at the text and start looking at the world map. Where, after all, are the main suspects? The debate over the Mountain of God essentially focuses on three major geographical areas, which serve as the rings of a great battle of ideas and evidence. Let's draw the dividing line. If you ask a traveler or open a Bible history textbook, the most likely answer is, Mount Sinai is located on the Sinai Peninsula. The candidate, Jebel Musa, or Mount Moses in Arabic, the location. The southern Sinai Peninsula, in modern Egypt. This is the traditional Sinai. Its strength lies not in irrefutable archaeological findings from the time of the Exodus, but rather in the force of historical tradition, dating back centuries. From the 4th century AD onwards, especially with the patronage of Emperor Constantine and his mother, Helena, this site was firmly established as Mount Sinai. The construction of the famous monastery of St. Catherine at its base sealed the deal. The idea is, if tradition, which is ancient and continuous, says it is here, who are we to doubt it? The quality of life side. Jebel Musa represents the comfort of tradition. It is the paved path that most follow. In your life, this is like following the rules of good coexistence that your grandparents taught you. It is safe, tested, and proven. The challenge here is tradition correct or just convenient? While the majority bows to tradition, a growing and very vocal minority points eastward to what is now Saudi Arabia. The trigger for this radical change is a verse from the Apostle Paul. In his letter to the Galatians 4:25, he writes, "For Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. If Sinai is in Arabia, the Sinai Peninsula, which is part of Egypt and Africa, would automatically be disqualified. The candidate, Jabal al-Lawz, or Mountain of Almonds in Arabic. The location, northwest Saudi Arabia, in the ancient land of Midian. This location has gained global fame through expeditions and documentaries in recent decades. The thesis is that the physical appearance of the mountain, with its blackened, as if burned summit, and the presence of a huge plateau in front of it, best fits the biblical descriptions of fire and the camp of the multitude. The quality of life. Side, Jabal al-Lawz represents challenge and investigation. It is the path that requires you to question what you have been taught. In your life, this is like having the courage to change careers or beliefs, requiring deep research and facing the judgment of others. It is risky, but it can lead to a more aligned truth. There is a third group of hypotheses, less media-friendly and more focused on the logic of the Exodus route. These researchers look north to the Negev Desert in southern Israel, or to other mountains in Midian, such as Mount Serbal on the Sinai Peninsula, but which is not Jebel Musa or Hala el-Badr, a volcano in Arabia. The focus. Mountains that fit more reasonably with the idea of a shorter journey or that present geological evidence, such as a volcano, that would explain the fire and tremor of Sinai. These candidates are less famous because they have neither the force of tradition, Jebel Musa, nor the spectacular controversy of supposed archaeological discoveries, Jabal al-Lawz. They are, for the most part, proposals based on roots and logistics. Close your eyes and imagine God's mountain. It is very likely that the image that appeared in your mind is that of Jebel Musa. This peak, in the heart of the Sinai Peninsula in modern Egypt, is not just a tall mountain. It is a symbol. It carries the weight of centuries of pilgrimage, worship, and unbroken history. If there is a Sinai of faith, as opposed to the Sinai of controversial archaeology, this is it. Let's understand why this mountain became the reference point for the story of Moses. Jebel Musa is not only tall, about 7,400 feet, it stands out in an already dramatic setting. The Sinai Peninsula is known for its granite mountains, which range in color from red to dark gray. The area is arid, desolate, and deeply silent, the perfect setting for a transcendental encounter. When climbing Jebel Musa, the pilgrim encounters a maze of peaks and valleys, known as wadis. Below its face is a valley known as Wadi ar-Ra'aha. This valley is a large plain that extends far enough to have theoretically housed the great camp of the Israelites, fulfilling track 1 that we discussed, the space for the people. The name Jebel Musa is no accident. It literally means Mountain of Moses in Arabic. It carries the narrative in its very name. The seed of tradition. Before the 4th century, it is important to be precise. The Bible never names which mountain on the Sinai Peninsula was the biblical Sinai. In the early centuries of Christianity and Judaism, it is important to be precise. The Bible never names which mountain on the Sinai Peninsula was the biblical Sinai. In the early centuries of Christianity and Judaism, there were debates and other candidate mountains on the peninsula itself, such as Mount Serbal. However, Jebel Musa began to gain traction due to a simple phenomenon. Monastic communities, monks and hermits sought isolation in the desert to devote themselves to prayer. And the Jebel Musa area, with its inhospitable environment, was ideal. They established small communities near the peak. The presence of these communities served as a magnet for memory. They became the guardians of a local oral tradition that pointed to that peak as the meeting place. The definitive turning point came in the 4th century AD. By this time, Christianity had been legalized in the Roman Empire by Constantine, and this is where the emperor's mother, Empress Helena, enters the story. Helena was a fervent pilgrim and a great builder of churches in holy places such as Jerusalem and Bethlehem. Her visit to the Sinai Peninsula is what solidified Jebel Musa as the Sinai. She recognized and sponsored the local monastic community, and at the base of the mountain, at what they believed to be the site of the burning bush, she had a small chapel built. The power of imperial decision. From that moment on, tradition was no longer just oral. It had the weight and patronage of the Roman Empire. For the vast majority of Christians and future pilgrims, the debate was over. Faith and official history had chosen. Jebel Musa represents the invaluable value of continuity, which brings security and stability to our journey of faith. Why has Jebel Musa survived for so long? It is the only location with a monastic and pilgrimage tradition that has been uninterrupted since the 4th century. Imposing. It is a majestic mountain that fits the dramatic description of an encounter with God. Wadi ar-Raha. The valley at its base offers a plausible space for a large crowd to camp. Jebel Musa, therefore, is more than a mountain. It is a monument to the fidelity of tradition. If Mount Sinai is the stage for the encounter, St. Catherine's Monastery is the sentinel. It is the stone guardian that, for more than 1,400 years, has pointed its finger and said, "It is here." To understand why Jebel Musa resists all geographical debates and remains the traditional Sinai, you need to understand this fortress, this island of order, amid the chaos of the desert. The monastery did not come about by chance. Its history begins, as we have seen, with a small chapel built by Empress Helena in the 4th century. But the colossal structure we know today is the work of another Roman emperor, Justinian, in the 6th century. Why build such a massive fortress in the middle of nowhere? Spiritual protection. The monastery was erected on the exact spot where tradition says the burning bush appeared to Moses, Exodus 3. It was not just a matter of marking a spot. It was about protecting the sacred ground from the invasion of time and ideologies. Physical protection. The region was, and still is, a meeting point for nomadic tribes. The massive structure, with its 15-meter-high granite walls, was built to withstand attacks. The monastery is a military and spiritual fortress in one place. If you are seeking a quality of life that can withstand storms, look at the monastery. The foundation is sacred ground faith, and the walls are unshakable protection, moral and ethical structure built with purpose. What makes Santa Caterina a unique place in the world is its continuity. Since its founding in the 6th century, it has never, ever been destroyed, abandoned, or permanently looted. It is the oldest Christian monastery in continuous operation in the world. Think about the history it has lived through: the rise of Islam, the Crusades, Ottoman empires, world wars, and it remained there. This permanence is due to a combination of geographical isolation and, fascinatingly, remarkable diplomatic skill. Legend, supported by historical documents, has it that the Prophet Muhammad himself issued a decree protecting the monks, guaranteeing their safety and freedom of worship. This allowed the Christian faith to flourish in a territory that became predominantly Muslim. The massive walls did not only protect the burning bush and the monks, they protected one of humanity's greatest intellectual treasures, its library. The Library of St. Catherine's is the second largest collection of ancient religious codices and manuscripts in the world, second only to the Vatican Library. It holds tens of thousands of books, scrolls, and documents, many written in Greek, Syriac, Arabic, and Georgian. The most famous find, although today it is largely in England and Russia, was the Codex Sinaiticus. The Codex Sinaiticus is one of the oldest and most complete manuscripts of the Bible in Greek, dating from the 4th century. Its discovery and preservation in the monastery were vital to the accuracy and modern study of the biblical text. This is where tradition meets academic precision. The monastery does not simply say, "We believe it is here." It has preserved the documents that allow us to study what is actually written, lending authority to its tradition. The monastery's great function is the consecration of Jebel Musa. By protecting the supposed site of the burning bush and building a pilgrimage route that lasted for centuries, it transformed a simple mountain into a sacred fixed point for the Christian world. Even if modern archaeology proves the location to be wrong, Jebel Musa will always be the Sinai of tradition. The mountain has gained a spiritual significance inseparable from the monastery. It is living proof that faith creates geography. So far, we have established that Jebel Musa has tradition and the monastery of St. Catherine in its favor. That is already a huge weight. But beyond faith and ecclesiastical history, there are geographical and logical arguments that make this location the most plausible candidate for most historians. Imagine you are investigating a 2,000-year-old crime. You have several witnesses. One witness has a recent and explosive account, but the evidence is controversial. Another witness has an account that spans 16 centuries, with an unbroken chain of people stating, the event happened here. In the Sinai debate, tradition is the second witness. Jebel Musa is the only site that has had an unbroken chain of custody of memory since the 4th century CE. It is not just the foundation of the monastery, it is the pilgrimage routes that have become established. Since Roman times, thousands of people, Jews, Christians, and later Muslims, have come to this mountain. They did not come because an archaeologist said it was the right place. They came because faith had consecrated the site. This unbroken tradition is, for many, a sufficient argument. Why does tradition matter for quality of life? Tradition is the anchor of your life. When you remain faithful to a principle, habit, or belief that has worked for generations, you protect yourself from instability. The tradition of Sinai reminds us that the commandments have stood the test of time. If you want a life that stands the test of time, you need tradition. The Sinai tradition reminds us that the commandments have stood the test of time. If you want a life that stands the test of time, you need a strong traditional foundation. Jebel Musa represents time-tested faithfulness. Argument 2. Sinai needs a plain large enough to camp millions of people. The mountain needed to be isolated by boundaries, and the people needed to be far away but close enough to hear. Jebel Musa has the Wadi al-Raha, Valley of Quiet, on its northwest face. This valley is one of the largest plateaus in the entire Sinai Peninsula. Geographically, it behaves like a natural amphitheater. Space. The valley has the capacity to accommodate a large mass of people, meeting the requirement for camping. Visibility. From any point in Wadi al-Raha, the face of Jebel Musa is spectacularly visible and imposing. This satisfies the requirement that the people could see the fire and smoke, and were able to observe the boundaries set by Moses. Acoustics. Archaeologists and geographers have noted the favorable natural acoustics of the valley, which would amplify the sound of a trumpet, or metaphorically, the powerful voice of God. Wadi al-Raha is not just a valley, it is a stage. And this natural stage is one of the strongest geographical arguments in favor of Jebel Musa. It provides the logistics that the biblical story requires for the event. Argument 3. For many scholars, the traditional route of the Exodus, leading to Jebel Musa, makes logistical sense, considering the available water sources and oases that would sustain a large group. The main point of reference is the site of Rephidim, where Moses struck the rock to bring forth water. Local tradition in the Sinai Peninsula points to a peak called Jebel Musa, not the same but in the region, where there is a rock split by a fissure known as the Rock of Horeb. Although the authenticity of this rock is debated, the fact that tradition places this crucial event on the way to the main Jebel Musa reinforces the coherence of the route. The logistics of the journey, the sequence of oases and springs, align plausibly with the route that would lead to this specific peak. In summary, the traditional Jebel Musa hypothesis has an internal route consistency that makes it convincing to those who rely on the detailed account of the stops in Exodus. Argument 4. The defense against Sinai in Arabia, Galatians 4:25. One of the biggest challenges to Jebel Musa is Paul's statement in Galatians 4:25. For Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. For defenders of the traditional Sinai, there are two main refutations. The definition of Arabia in the 1st century AD. They argue that the word Arabia in Paul's time did not mean the modern nation of Saudi Arabia. The geographical term Provincia Arabia, or the region known as the Nabatean Kingdom, often included parts of what is now the definition of Arabia in the 1st century AD. They argue that the word Arabia in Paul's time did not mean the modern nation of Saudi Arabia. The geographical term Provincia Arabia, or the region known as the Nabatean Kingdom, often included parts of what is now the Negev Desert and, crucially, the Sinai Peninsula. Therefore, the Sinai Peninsula could have been considered Arabia in a broad sense, not invalidating Jebel Musa. Theological use. Others argue that Paul was making a theological point, not a geographical one. He was comparing two covenants, that of the slave Hagar with the law of Sinai and that of the free Sarah with the freedom of Christ. The goal was to link Sinai to a place of origin of slavery, the law, and the term Arabia, a foreign land, served perfectly for this rhetorical purpose, without intending to be a map. By neutralizing their opponent's most powerful weapon, defenders of Jebel Musa maintain the validity of their argument based on unbroken tradition. The tradition of Jebel Musa is a castle of faith built of granite. But for many scholars, archaeologists, and skeptics, that faith is anchored in shifting historical sand. This is where the debate comes alive, for the absence of evidence is as eloquent as its presence. If Jebel Musa were the real Sinai, the story of millions of people camped there for a year should have left a mark. But for critics, the silence of the desert is deafening. Let's look at the main counter-arguments that fuel the search for an alternative Sinai. Criticism E. Archaeological silence, the proof that does not exist. This is the critic's most powerful weapon. If a mass of perhaps 2 to 3 million people, the traditional biblical number, or even the more conservative estimate of tens of thousands, camped in Wadi al-Raha for approximately a year, enough time to build the tabernacle as Exodus recounts, they would have had to leave a massive archaeological trail. What should be found? Piles of broken pottery, pots, bowls, trash, animal bones, fire remains, tools, and, crucially, cemeteries. What was found? Virtually nothing that can be dated with certainty to the time of the Exodus, generally set between the 15th and 13th centuries BC, or the Late Bronze Age. Excavations carried out in the Jebel Musa area have only found evidence of occupation by hermits and monks, beginning much later, around the 4th century AD. The counter-argument. Defenders of the tradition argue that nomads do not leave large traces, or that the desert and subsequent monastic activity erased the evidence. However, for a long-term encampment of such magnitude, the complete absence of late Bronze Age pottery or cemeteries is seen by most of academia as a failure of the Jebel Musa hypothesis. Criticism the delay of tradition, the 1,600-year gap. The establishment of Jebel Musa as the sacred Sinai begins, as we have seen, with Helena and Justinian around the 4th to 6th centuries AD. The Exodus took place at least 1,600 years earlier. The question is straightforward. If this was the mountain of God, why did Jewish memory, which was extremely rigorous in preserving sacred sites, such as the temple, lose it? If the Jews, who had the Bible and oral tradition, did not maintain the continuity of pilgrimage to this place, how did a Roman empress who lived centuries away from the event manage to find it? For critics, this suggests that Jebel Musa was a devotional choice, based on convenience and the search for a grand location to anchor the new Christian faith, rather than historical continuity. Criticism third. The inconvenience of the route, where to flee. The logistical criticism is very strong. The Sinai Peninsula, where Jebel Musa is located, was, at the time of the New Kingdom of Egypt, the probable period of the Exodus, a region under strong Egyptian control. The Egyptians had turquoise and copper mines in Serabit el-Qadim and Timna, and maintained military garrisons there. The idea that the Israelites fled Egypt and, instead of heading east, away, or north towards Canaan, made a long and tiring march to the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula, an area under strong Egyptian influence, seems illogical to many. Why would Moses lead the people into the backyard of their pursuers, taking them to a geographical dead end, the south of the peninsula, instead of following a more direct route to the Promised Land? This raises a big question about the route and suggests that the biblical Sinai should be in a region outside Egyptian control, a foreign and safe land. Jebel Musa is beautiful, it is traditional, and it is home to an incredible monastery. But by the standards of modern archaeology, the absence of evidence from the Late Bronze Age is an almost insurmountable obstacle. This evidence gap creates the perfect space for the debate to move forward and for the next, much more controversial, hypothesis to gain traction. If Sinai was not in Pharaoh's territory, where else could it be? The answer takes us across the Gulf of Aqaba and into forbidden territory, Saudi Arabia. If tradition clings to Jebel Musa, the Sinai in Arabia thesis clings to a single biblical verse and a powerful concept: geographical freedom. This thesis argues that the Israelites fled Egypt and went to a land that was, in fact, foreign and therefore safe. To understand this revolution, we need to go back to the New Testament. The spark of controversy, Galatians 4:25. The starting point for this whole theory is not in Exodus, but in the Apostle Paul's letter to the churches of Galatia. In a complex theological argument about the law, Sinai, Hagar, and grace, Jerusalem, Sarah, Paul writes the phrase that changed the map of the Bible. For Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, Galatians 4:25. This simple and direct statement is the biblical anchor of the thesis. For defenders of Sinai in Arabia, geography is not a detail. It is an explicit instruction. The Sinai Peninsula is Egypt. The Sinai Peninsula, where Jebel Musa is located, was at the time of the new Egyptian kingdom part of Egyptian rule, or at least a sphere of strong influence. Arabia is foreign. If the Exodus was an escape, Moses would have to lead the people to a territory beyond Pharaoh's reach. Paul's Arabia, referring to the region of the Nabatean kingdom or the land of Midian, fits this requirement perfectly. The question is relentless. Why would God make the people flee Egypt only to take them to the Egyptian backyard? Geographical logic demands a safe haven. And that refuge, according to this thesis, can only be, the question is relentless. Why would God make the people flee Egypt only to take them to the Egyptian backyard? Geographical logic demands a safe haven. And that refuge, according to this thesis, can only be in Arabia. Before Moses encountered the burning bush and received his calling, he fled Egypt after killing a taskmaster. Where did he go? But Moses fled because of this and lived in the land of Midian. Exodus 2:15. Moses lived in Midian for 40 years, married Zipporah, daughter of Jethro, the priest of Midian, and was tending his father-in-law's flock when he arrived at Horeb, the mountain of God. Exodus 3:1. This implies a crucial connection. The mountain of God was in or near the land where Moses lived for 4 decades. Where was Midian? Historical and geographical studies locate Midian on the east coast of the Gulf of Aqaba, in the northwestern region of modern Saudi Arabia. If Mount Sinai was in Midian, and Midian was in Arabia, then Mount Sinai must be in modern Saudi Arabia. The narrative consistency between Moses' flight and the location of the revelation is a powerful argument in favor of this thesis. The Sinai in Arabia thesis requires a fundamental change in the route of the Exodus. The crossing of the Red Sea would not have taken place in the Gulf of Suez, the traditional location, but rather in the Gulf of Aqaba, also known as the Gulf of Eilat. The logic. If the Israelites crossed the Gulf of Aqaba, they would have literally stepped onto Arabian soil, the land of Midian, immediately after the miracle. The route would be much more direct to the interior of Arabia, away from Egyptian surveillance. This change in route is what allows researchers to point to the most famous candidate for this thesis, which lies hundreds of kilometers from Jebel Musa. If Jebel Musa is the mountain of tradition, Jabal al-Lawz is the mountain of revolution. It is the main candidate for the Sinai thesis in Arabia, and because it is the direct opposite of tradition, it carries the greatest weight of controversy and fascination. The story of how this remote peak in Saudi Arabia became the center of modern biblical debate seems to have come straight out of a movie. Jabal al-Lawz, meaning Almond Mountain or Nut Mountain, is located in the Tabuk province in northwestern Saudi Arabia. This region is historically the ancient land of Midian. Remember, Moses fled to Midian. He found the burning bush on the mountain of God. Therefore, the mountain of God was in or near Midian. Midian is in Arabia. Jabal al-Lawz fits perfectly into this geographical puzzle. It is not in the Egyptian-controlled Sinai Peninsula. It is in the territory of Jethro, the priest of Midian, and Moses' father-in-law. the location makes immediate sense as a safe haven. Jabal al-Lawz gained global fame in the late 1980s and 1990s, driven by American amateur explorers, notably Ron Wyatt and later Bob Cornuke. These explorers, guided by Paul's logic about Arabia, traveled to the region. What they found, or what they claimed to have found, was so dramatic that it challenged centuries of tradition. They brought back to the West photos and videos that showed a mountain with a burnt-looking peak, remains of a possible gigantic camp, drawings and artifacts that seemed to fit perfectly with the Exodus narrative. This discovery gained massive traction outside of traditional academia, particularly in evangelical circles, spawning documentaries and books. It is a phenomenon of evidence for laymen that the Jebel Musa tradition failed to offer. The immediate visual argument, the blackened peak. The most visual and striking argument in favor of Jabal al-Lawz is the appearance of its summit. Unlike the surrounding pink and white granite mountains, the peak of Jabal al-Lawz is, in fact, visibly black. It appears to have been charred or burned. Proponents claim that this is geological proof of the biblical event. And Mount Sinai was all in smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace. Exodus 19:18. The argument is simple and straightforward. If God descended in fire and smoke, the mountain should bear the scars. Jebel Musa does not have this feature. Jabal al-Lawz does. This makes the thesis immediately appealing to those seeking literal physical confirmation of the text. The scientific counterpoint, brief. It is important to note that skeptical geologists, who have rarely had access to the mountain, a problem we will address, explain this black coloration as volcanic rock or mineral oxidation. However, the visual force of the argument persists. The perfect geographical fit, the camp and the boundaries. Just as Jebel Musa had Wadi al-Raha, Jabal al-Lawz has a vast area surrounding it that proponents consider to be a superior fit for the crowd. The mountain has a large plain at its base, which is even more spacious and open than that of the traditional Sinai. More crucially, on one side of the mountain, there is an area that appears to be surrounded by rocks, a natural or artificial barrier that bears a striking resemblance to the boundary established by Moses. Remember, the mountain needed a boundary so that the people would not touch it, and set bounds for the people around, saying, "Be careful not to go up the mountain or touch its boundary." Exodus 19:12. For Law's proponents, this combination of a gigantic plain, a burnt peak, and a physical barrier creates a crime scene that irrefutably matches the account. The Forbidden Mountain. The challenge of the search. Jabal al-Lawz is not a tourist attraction. It is located in Saudi territory, and the government has surrounded it with a security fence for years. The area is classified as an archaeological site, and access is strictly controlled to prevent unauthorized explorers from entering. This forbidden status has only added to the mystery and fascination. The fact that it is difficult, almost impossible, to visit has made the story of Jabal al-Lawz a modern legend, often presented as the truth the establishment doesn't want you to know. This candidate is, therefore, more than a mountain. It is a symbol of research and challenge. And what explorers say they have found around it is what makes the controversy so explosive. If Jebel Musa failed to offer any evidence of the Late Bronze Age, proponents of Jabal al-Lawz claim to have found a complete catalogue of evidence that fits perfectly with the Exodus narrative. These claims have turned the mountain into a phenomenon. However, it is crucial to analyze this evidence with precision and rigor, differentiating between what is fact, a structure exists, and what is interpretation. This structure is biblical. Remember clue 2. Before reaching Sinai, the people murmured for water at Rephidim, and Moses struck the rock. Law's explorers point to a huge split granite rock located near the base of the mountain in what would be the Rephidim area. The claim: the rock has a gigantic vertical crack, as if it had been struck with great force. At its base, there are signs of water erosion, suggesting a massive flow at some point. For proponents, this is the rock that Moses struck, Exodus 17:6. This rock is conveniently located in an area that would indeed have been arid and challenging, fitting with the people's desperation for water. quality of life, and resilience. The split rock reminds us that even in the driest deserts of life, times of crisis, debt, or illness, the solution may lie in an act of faith and authority, Moses striking the rock. God's mountain is not just about the law, it is about the provision that sustains you in the desert. Evidence 2. The altar of the golden calf, betrayal at the base. Perhaps the most explosive evidence relates to Israel's great betrayal, the worship of the golden calf, Exodus 32. The biblical account is clear. Aaron built an altar. At the foot of Jabal al-Lawz, explorers found a stone enclosure that resembles an ancient altar. The site is notable not for the structure itself, but for the rock carvings surrounding it. There are several carvings, petroglyphs, of oxen and calves in a style that, according to some, is not common in local rock art and appears to be very ancient. The presence of this large altar, surrounded by images of cattle, the golden calf was probably an ox bull, right at the base of the mountain where God was speaking, is archaeological evidence of the event in Exodus 32. The skeptical counterpoint. Traditional archaeologists point out that cattle petroglyphs are extremely common throughout Arabia, since cattle were a vital part of nomadic life. Furthermore, the dating of these engravings is uncertain. To say that they prove the golden calf is a major interpretation based on faith and narrative coherence, not scientific dating. Evidence 3. Jabal al-Lawz presents two findings that fit with the organization of the camp and worship. 1. The pillars. The Bible recounts that Moses built an altar and 12 pillars. Pillars, according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Exodus 24:4. The discovery. Near the mountain, the remains of 12 stone pillars were found, aligned in a way that suggests human organization. The claim. These are said to be the original pillars built by Moses to seal the covenant. 2. The boundary fence. As mentioned, the mountain has an extensive wall of loose stones at its base. The claim. This is the physical boundary imposed by God, so that the people would not invade the holy mountain, solving clue 4, Exodus 19:12. These findings, if interpreted biblically, create a complete map that links the water crisis, the foundation of the law, the sin of the calf, and the camp structure, all in one place. Evidence 4. The story continues with the prophet Elijah, who, centuries later, fled to Mount Horeb. And there, on Mount Horeb, he went into a cave and spent the night. 1 Kings 19:9. The discovery. In the Jabal al-Lawz region, there is a cave that has been widely promoted as the Cave of Elijah. The presence of all these geographical and archaeological elements in the same location, split rock, plain, altar, and cave, makes Jabal al-Lawz the most narratively complete candidate of all. The fact that Saudi authorities have fenced off Jabal al-Lawz and restricted access has fueled conspiracy theories that they are hiding evidence. Reality. The Saudi government classifies the site as a sensitive archaeological site because it contains important Islamic and pre-Islamic finds, such as the ancient city of Midian al-Bad. Restricting access may be an attempt to protect the site from amateur explorers, but in practice, it prevents scientific validation of the claims. The evidence from Lawz teaches us about the power of conviction. What are you looking for in life? Are you more likely to believe the exciting and complete narrative, or do you demand scientific rigor and validated proof? A quality life requires you to question the evidence and not settle for a story that sounds good, but may just be a coincidence. The deeper truth requires patience and healthy skepticism. The Jabal al-Lawz thesis is visually powerful and narratively coherent, but it encounters a wall of almost unanimous resistance in the traditional archaeological and biblical community. The main reason is the lack of scientific validation and methodological rigor in the findings. Criticism I, lack of dating and selective evidence. The biggest problem with the Lawz evidence is the uncertainty of dating. Petroglyphs. The drawings of oxen and calves on the supposed altar are common in Arabian rock art. Archaeologists point out that many of these petroglyphs date from thousands of years after the probable period of the Exodus, late Bronze Age. Furthermore, they are not uniformly from the same period. The absence of carbon-14 dating or a reliable stratigraphic context, layers of earth that indicate chronology, prevents us from asserting that the altar was used by Moses. The split rock. The crack in the rock may be a natural geological phenomenon resulting from freezing, thawing, and expansion processes, or part of rituals of later peoples. With no pottery or artifacts from the Exodus period at the base of the rock, the claim is, at best, a plausible coincidence, not historical proof. For skeptics, Lawz's thesis makes the mistake of selecting existing geological and cultural elements and interpreting them retroactively in light of the Bible. Criticism 2. As with Jebel Musa, the challenge of accommodating millions, or even tens of thousands, of people at Jabal al-Lawz for a year requires evidence of a long-term encampment. If people had camped there, there should be pottery from the correct period, late Bronze Age. Remains of temporary or semi-permanent buildings, tools and objects from Egypt, which the people would certainly have taken with them. To date, explorers have provided the academic community with no evidence of pottery or datable artifacts confirming the presence of a large population of recent arrivals from Egypt during the Exodus period at the base of Jabal al-Lawz, the archaeological counterpoint. The lack of pottery at Lawz is as damaging to your thesis as the lack of pottery at Jebel Musa. While the visual evidence is strong, the material and datable evidence is weak or non-existent. Criticism 3. The strongest evidence at Lawz is its blackened peak. However, the geological explanation for the mountaintop is controversial. Some geologists who have examined limited samples from the area suggest that the dark coloration may be attributed to volcanic flows, although Lawz is not an active volcano, or to processes of oxidation of ferrous minerals common in granite exposed to certain climatic conditions. Without extensive and unrestricted on-site analysis, it is premature to claim that the mountain was burned by a supernatural event 3,500 years ago. The darkened summit is intriguing, but it is not definitive proof. Criticism 4. The way the evidence was disclosed contributed to skepticism. Many of the original proponents were not trained archaeologists. They used questionable methods, such as digging without stratigraphic documentation, and had a strong bias. They were looking for the mountain, not just studying the region. Saudi restriction. Lack of unrestricted access prevents serious research. Archaeologists need permission to conduct systematic excavations and validate findings. As long as this permission is denied, the claims remain in the category of explorers' theories rather than academic discoveries. The search for the real Mount Sinai is an exercise in skeptical curiosity. Moses did not receive the law in a dream or ethereal vision. He climbed a mountain of rock and earth. The fact that the mountain is physical requires our faith to be subjected to reason and evidence. We have traversed a vast desert spanning 3,500 years. We have seen the power of tradition at Jebel Musa and the excitement of investigation at Jabal al-Lawz. We have found evidence, lack of evidence, and many questions. But as we close the map, we arrive at the most important truth. The location of Mount Sinai is, in the end, a geographical mystery that serves a clear spiritual purpose. The debate over the stone mountain, whether in Egypt or Arabia, forces us to accept a great and liberating uncertainty. We do not know the exact coordinates. And that uncertainty is the key to our peace of mind and quality of life. Tradition teaches us the value of fidelity over time. The controversy teaches us the intellectual courage to question and seek the deeper truth. Archaeological silence teaches us the humility of knowing that faith does not need laboratory proof to be valid, but is strengthened by honest seeking. What matters is not where the fire descended, but what came out of the fire. The covenant. The true legacy of Mount Sinai is the content of the Ten Commandments. They are not arbitrary rules. They are the Creator's instruction manual for a functional, fulfilling human life in community. Pillar 1. The vertical axis, the first commandments. They establish your relationship with the source of life. Recognizing something greater than yourself and taking time to rest, the Sabbath, are pillars of mental health and purpose. Pillar 2. The horizontal axis, the last commandments. These establish your relationship with your neighbor. Do not steal, do not lie, do not covet. These are the foundations of trust, social peace, and financial and emotional security that define a high-quality life. In the end, the geographical debate is just the packaging for a universal message. If you live by the commandments, it doesn't matter if you're in Egypt, Arabia, or anywhere else in the world. You are building a life on the rock that came out of God's mountain. Final challenge, find your own Sinai. Find your own. Mount Sinai is the place of encounter and transformation. The people arrived there as slaves, without identity. They left as a nation, with a law. The real Sinai is the place where you decide to stop running, set up camp, and receive God's rules for your life. Your journey to quality of life requires you to find your own Sinai. It may be in a moment of crisis, in a solitary prayer, or in the decision to radically change a destructive habit. Wherever you are, the Spirit of God is ready to descend into your life and give you the map to fulfillment. Don't spend all your energy looking for the mountain on the map. Spend your energy living the law that came out of it. If you liked it, click like and see you in the next video.